Welcome to the Scituate Zoning Board of Appeals. Public hearing of Selectmen's Hearing Room. Let's see, date August 17th, 2017. It's 7 p.m. and we're going to open the meeting. Sure.
The first application is Craig S. Valdez.
Well, wait a minute, can I just stop? Can we, does it make sense? We can't hear any evidence, even if we open the meeting on this
Correct.
one? As long as we don't take evidence, correct?
Well, we have to open the meeting.
We have to open the meeting, but I'm saying open the hearing on this particular application.
Yeah,
with
I think we have
John's
to
issue.
do that so John can say what he needs to say.
But then, but I don't think we can take any, we can't talk about any evidence because not everybody will be here.
Actually, well,
Yes.
yeah, that's the reason that we record the meetings. A person doesn't have to be here in person.
I'm not sure if Situate's,
Well,
did
we've
Scituate-
actually made rulings before based on reviewing.
Yeah, oh, so Scituate has adopted that bylaw? We have to, before you can do that, you have to adopt the bylaw.
I know
Town
that
meeting.
for a fact that we have
Done it before.
ruled on hearings based on a person present stating on the
Okay.
record that they have reviewed.
That's fine, because I don't think we're gonna hear anything
Yeah,
anyway.
but the thing is, if I recuse, we no longer have a quorum, so we can't.
Well, right, so we wouldn't be able to make a ruling.
Right,
Yeah.
Right.
Uh,
And whether it makes sense to hear anything is another question entirely.
yeah, I
Right.
don't think we should.
Yep.
And you're thinking, what's going on? We're gonna tell you.
Andy, agree with that? Or?
Craig
Okay,
S. Valdez,
sorry.
Commonwealth Realty Services Incorporated of 58 Woodworth Lane in Scituate requests a special permit finding pursuant to section 810.2 and 470.6F of the Scituate zoning bylaws and/or Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 6, and/or any other relief the Board of Appeals may grant to allow reconstruction of a single-family dwelling consisting of non-conforming lot at 164 Turner Road in Scituate, Assessor's Map 46, Block 14, Parcel 15.
Okay, and now the question we have, or the dilemma we have tonight is, unfortunately, I am a direct abutter to the property with my
Hey,
aunt's estate.
They're in answers to the question.
So I cannot,
You don't have a quorum.
right, I cannot vote on this, so what we're proposing to do is to reschedule it for next September, our next meeting.
May
Not
I
next
ask a
coming
question?
September.
What's the non-conforming?
Well, I think one of our issues is the question about whether or not we get into any evidence with not a quorum being here.
I understand that.
Right, and
But
the
there-
better
but
person probably
But
to
when
ask,
somebody's made a determination that it's not conforming.
that's, I think that's
That would
Bob.
have been Bob.
Bob,
Okay, hey,
yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah,
No,
so,
I mean, it jumps out. The rear setback's definitely something to look at, but
right,
we'll deal with that at the next hearing.
yeah. And when he says next September, you mean, we mean just the
Next
next
month.
meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah,
We understand.
okay, good, good. So you're okay with that, I assume?
You don't have any choice.
We don't have a
Yeah.
We
choice.
have no choice. so
That's
this will
good.
make a difference.
Well, thank you for being, kind about that, so.
So, motion to continue this application to our September meeting.
September, what date?
Third.
I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
21st it is? That's the third Thursday.
September 21st.
I'll second?
Great.
All in favor?
Aye,
Aye.
sorry.
Yeah.
But at least you get to get home early.
There you go.
Thank you very much. And this, of course, is complicated. Ed's on vacation, and unfortunately, we lost
It's summer, come on.
Frank last month, so.
Okay, take care all.
Thank you.
Very much. Okay, leaves us with you.
Second
Second application.
Second and final application.
Stockbridge 2 Realty Trust, Pierre Cole, trustee of 20 North Park Avenue, Plymouth. Request an insubstantial modification to the comprehensive permit issued on or about February 10th, 2003, and most recently modified on April 20th, 2017, for the elimination of the clubhouse and for new decks on the units, and for footprints of a lesser area for the property at 96 Stockbridge Road at Scituate, previously referenced as 90 Stockbridge Road at Scituate, also being identified as Assessor's Map 54, Block 2, parcels 28A and 28C, both portions of former Assessor's Map 54, Block 2, and parcel 28.
How are you?
Good, I am not a butter to this property.
Me either. So we're clear.
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm Adam Costa. You might remember me. I was before you just a few short months ago on behalf of Stockbridge 2 Realty Trust. This is a comprehensive permit project, as was just suggested, that was issued back in 2003 by your board. And the applicant has been back on a few occasions since 2003 seeking a variety of what the statute and the regulations refer to as both substantial and insubstantial changes to the project. I suspect you know the difference between the two under the regulations. 40B is a bit different than special permits and variances authorized under the Zoning Act. It distinguishes between substantial changes to a project once a permit's issued, which trigger a new requirement of a public hearing and a more extensive review process, and insubstantial changes which don't require that extensive review. The way that the regulation is structured, it obviously can't contemplate every type of potential change to every type of project. And so it gives a few examples of what constitutes substantial changes. It gives a few examples of what constitute insubstantial changes, and then it leaves the rest in your hands to decide on a case-by-case basis. We were fortunate when we came before you a few months ago because we were seeking a change of housing tenure from one housing tenure to another, rental to ownership, and in doing so, we cited to the regulations, and specifically the regulations address a change of housing tenure as something that qualifies as a quote-unquote substantial change. So we conceded that from the start. You noticed a public hearing, we attended the public hearing, and you granted the approval. We have two additional changes before you. One is incredibly minor, and the other one is maybe not quite so minor, but we believe they both qualify as insubstantial changes just based upon the nature of the changes. The first of them is a proposal that we remove the clubhouse that was originally approved on the project plans. I gave a bit of a rationale, and Jim O'Brien is in attendance with me tonight from Dakota Partners. You might remember that when we were before you a few months ago, we also provided notice that the comprehensive permit was going to be transferred to Dakota Partners, and that's what really triggered our request for the change in tenure, and frankly, it's also what is triggering our request to you today as we proceed further with the development of the project and into the further stages of development. Obviously, each developer has certain preferences, and as developers begin to explore things like marketability or saleability of units in a project, oftentimes as a consequence of that, the project morphs a bit into something somewhat different than what was originally approved. So the clubhouse, clubhouses were, and they still are part of many projects, but they were far more popular in years past. They provided amenities to the residents of a development, whether it be a rental or a first sale development. They've become increasingly less popular in recent years, particularly in areas, I don't want to call them urban areas, but more urban or suburban areas versus rural areas where there is access to other amenities off-site. The problem with the clubhouse, of course, is that you've got to pay to construct that clubhouse, but then in perpetuity, you've got to pay to maintain that clubhouse, whether it be everything from painting the clubhouse to heating or cooling the clubhouse. And then, of course, all of those additional costs are borne by and get imposed upon the residents of the development. So it can be a challenge with respect to saleability of units, because in addition to trying to persuade a potential purchaser to acquire a unit for a price of X, you're also asking them to assume a monthly or an annual condominium or association fee to maintain not just things like the roadways and the utilities on the common areas of the site, but also the fairly significant expense of a clubhouse. So of late, Dakota Partners, meeting with the agents who will be marketing some of these units, got a recommendation that we explore removal of the clubhouse. Now, I've had a few cases where clubhouse removals have risen to the level of substantial changes, because what applicants have sought to do is replace the clubhouse with units. Had a project in Sudbury a few years back where that exact same thing happened. There was a clubhouse with a pool that was proposed, and it was actually constructed, and they got through, I think, phase 3 of a 5-phase project, and the owners in phases 1, 2, and 3 didn't want to pay to maintain the pool and to maintain the clubhouse, so they actually asked the developer to come in with a proposal to fill in the pool and remove the clubhouse and construct units in the location of those amenities. That's a little different. That rises to the level of a substantial change because depending upon the number of units that are proposed, it probably falls into one of those examples that's in the regulations. Regulations say if you're increasing the number of units by 5% or more, that constitutes a substantial change. We're not proposing that here. We're actually just proposing to physically remove the clubhouse from the plans and not construct it in the location shown on the plans and simply to replace it with green space.
And where on the
Yeah.
plans is?
Sure, we have the original plans we brought with us to show you what was approved.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we provided you with smaller scale plans showing you the location of the former clubhouse.
Is there a building number for the clubhouse?
I don't think there was a building number for it, no.
I'm not sure, I don't see it on these plans that we have, but I guess it'll be on the old
Yeah,
plans.
so these are the stamped plans from the ZBA and the approval. This is the location of the clubhouse, and this is the parking for the clubhouse. On the next sheet, you'll see this is the sewer treatment plant area.
Well, wait a minute, so can you, then where would that be on the
Right here.
revised plans? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
right there, it's just now green space.
And where would the parking have been?
The parking is right to the left of the clubhouse, so it would have been right there along that road line.
Right here, like this? Okay.
It was just inset parking,
So what you've submitted to us here is the proposed change.
proposed plan, that's
With the
correct.
change.
Correct.
on it.
Yep.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
It was, I'll credit your clerk or your secretary, she reached out to us and said this is what was approved so we can do a comparison, so she asked us to bring the
And
original plans with
this
us.
whole area is the sewer treatment facility.
Right.
Sure.
yeah.
So, there's no plans other than.
Would there be any other changes to drainage calculations or anything like that? So that, again, it would just be an increase of pervious and green space surface.
Correct, yeah. If anything, the drainage calculations will improve when we come to the as-built.
Sure.
Yeah, because there's less runoff, less surface area, less asphalt for the parking.
And what about landscaping of that space?
We'll continue the landscaping as consistent with the rest of the green space area. They have some plantings and things called out in the landscaping plans. We'll just continue that around the corner.
Was there any consideration to any kind of playground? Because is there a playground at all on this property?
There is not, and we may come back to talk to you about a playground or a gazebo or something like that, but we want to let some of the community develop and know that it's there for space to come back, hopefully for another minor modification.
Right.
Yeah, because I think that would, sort of as a general principle, I don't have, I can see your point, but it would be nice to see a little bit further development for the benefit of the residents, and some sort of a small playground and green space for families would also be nice.
Yeah, so the board is aware we are looking at sewer treatment plant and possibly enhancing that landscape tremendously around all the equipment. And so I think we're gonna come in with another minor modification that enhances that and then addresses what we have flushed out, possible amenities in that.
Yeah, and I can imagine you don't want to do that until you've been given permission to remove it. Yeah, that makes sense. Have you calculated what elimination of the clubhouse would do to this, to the sale of the cost of the properties for sale?
We haven't looked at a cost factor directly to the sale cost of each unit. What we've looked at is that it does affect the long-term viability of the condo fees for the parties looking at it. So it was more of a long-term aspect, will they buy, as opposed to a cost per unit.
And being not that familiar with the calculation for the sale prices between the obvious reduction in cost because you're not building a clubhouse and what I'm guessing the lack of future condominium fees does, those things would sort of offset. One would lower the sale price of the units, I'm sure, and one would raise them a little bit. What, in general, net difference, are we looking at the sale price of the units going up or down because of this change?
I think the way we looked at it is that the units would become more marketable and open up more people that could afford the condo fee that would be reduced. Because when they calculate mortgages and purchases, So
Right.
if we can show that we've got a reduction in the condo fee, let's say of $50 or $100 a
So the
month.
purchase price goes up, is what
Well,
you're
it
saying.
might be that they have a better mortgage position. I don't know necessarily that the purchase price will go up. It seems like it would be a linear adjustment, but I really don't know that we've looked at it that way.
It also provides a benefit for the affordable units, because I'm not sure how familiar you are with DHCD's mechanism and
what I was
calculation. Right, so their calculation, they determine that your area median income can't exceed 80%. But then for housing purposes, for income purposes, they determine that you can't be spending more than 30% of your monthly income on housing costs. And they consider housing costs as housing and utilities. And if there's a condominium fee or some other rental fees, additional rent, that's included in that equation. So obviously that'll be cut out here, so it'll essentially widen that window of potential affordable purchasers, that's 70 to 80% area median income. It would widen it because you'd have individuals who could afford it that may not be able to qualify if there was an additional $100, $150, $200 a month fee associated with maintaining a clubhouse.
How big was, can you give me just a general description of what the clubhouse was to be? How many square feet, 2 stories, 1 story?
I think it identifies it as roughly around 1,500 square feet. It wasn't too big to begin with.
Yeah. Is single story?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, it's not huge.
Yeah, one big open space with a lot of ceiling to heat. That was the problem.
Yeah.
And it looks like it had a porch on it too, but.
Yeah. And I think, you know, when you talk about the cost and the offset, like I said, we'll probably be back in with these amenities that we do want to replace.
Which will eat back into
That
some of
will eat
that.
back into
Yep.
whatever we didn't spend on the clubhouse. We're hoping to augment the landscaping and whatever amenities we can actually provide.
But ongoing of those, maintenance of those sort of things is a lot less than
lot
ongoing
less.
maintenance of a habitable structure.
Right, they're almost landscaping elements.
Right.
All right, good.
So that's the first modification, and probably the one that requires the most discussion among the two. So the second one is arguably something that wouldn't even necessarily need to come before your board, and let me explain what I mean when I say that. So, the comprehensive permit law, when it was first adopted, was envisioned to require what is often referred to as concept plans being submitted to a zoning board of appeals. The idea being that those plans are not nearly to the level of detail as what would be expected through the usual permitting process or through the permitting process with your building inspector for the purposes of obtaining either a foundation permit or a building permit.
Thank you.
In reality, boards in Massachusetts over the years have requested more and more. And I know of very few boards, and this is a perfect example, even as far back as 2003, where you required fairly extensive plans. You required plans that showed roadway widths and grading and topography, et cetera, things that wouldn't traditionally be on a concept plan. However, as the law stands even today, it's not expected that the construction plans for purposes of the structures themselves will be to the level of detail as what is ultimately submitted to your building inspector. And the case law acknowledges that there's some variation that occurs. You don't need to rush back to the zoning board of appeals every time your construction level detail is somewhat different than what was on the approved plans. The building inspector has the authority under state law to modify those as he sees fit, so long as it's generally within the parameters of what you approved. Well, when you look at and we brought them with us as well, we have multiple copies, I think it's what was just provided to you. When you look at the floor plans that were approved, the footprints and floor plans that were approved as part of the original proposal, there were not extensive dimensions. The approximate dimensions of each of the rooms are shown, but that's about all we had at the time. Well, now that we're in a position where we're preparing for construction, we have better defined those units individually with specific dimensions, not just for each room, but for the units as a whole. And we're also further developing the design of the unit, and that includes the addition of decks onto many of these units. And so, since we were coming before you anyway to seek permission for the modification relating to removal of the clubhouse, we also wanted to seek your authorization, your approval, your okay, and make you aware of the revised plans that we've submitted with the request, showing that level of detail. Dimensions on each of the units, showing the locations of the deck. We've explained to you that in terms of the overall difference in square footage, the cumulative difference is less than a 5% adjustment from the approved plans. No effect or alteration of drainage, no effect or alteration of wetland resource areas that are required. Conservation Commission or anything like that. None of that is affected. They're all generally within or in the same locations as the footprints that were approved as part of the original plans back in 2003.
How close were you with respect to the proposed square footage of these units as opposed to what you've developed at this point?
Sure.
As you can see from the sketches that were done in 2000, we've had probably a number of code changes in the last 15 years. But we've kept the
Three different
footprints
building codes.
pretty close, because all we could go through, which is exact, is the footprints of the units.
Yeah,
So we're literally within about 4% of the original footprints overall of the entire site. We've not changed the context of the unit with respect to 2 or 3 story or anything like that. And we've only really added decks and defined entries and areas that some of them are now required by code that weren't even required back then. So a lot of it is it's not more than 4% of a difference in respect to the footprint. And that has to do with the things that we've added, like decks and stuff that are really not part of the square footage of the unit. The unit probably hasn't changed more than 0.5% to 1% in respect to square footage.
same number of bedrooms in all
Yes.
each of the units and all
Yes.
that. Are these little red boxes on the back sides of, are these the decks, is that I'm looking at?
Yeah, so you'll see in the bottom, I put a legend where the red is actually the new building footprint.
Right.
And then I overlaid the lighter gray underneath it.
Oh,
you'll
so
see-
that's what I've missed. I can't-
That's why I wanted to give you the full copy. Would you each like a full copy? Also, as you see, the middle units had decks anyways, we're just qualifying where they are in the size.
And again, the decks are almost ground level,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh, they're not, no overhead decks, no
No,
second-story
no.
decks?
no
No.
balconies.
Oh,
They're elevated, but they're not.
Yeah, but they're
Yeah.
not second floor decks.
Right, we haven't added to the exterior of the structure or any further encroachments to setbacks as they are for any of the wetland resources. All of that has been maintained.
okay. Did you see?
I did.
And then we submitted the unit plans to the board that just back up the sizes now that we'll be submitting to the building inspector as we refine those. Right now, the drawings we've brought to about 30 or 40%, so that we could gain this approval, and then we'll finish up the framing plans and get ready for the building permit.
If, assuming all goes through with respect to what we have to do, is there a time when you're going to start the actual units?
We're looking right now to hopefully have a closing November 1st and get going. So we have bank financing, everything lined up. We've actually pushed along with the, as Adam said, the design and stuff with comfort that we can do certain things because of code requirements. So we're progressing along and meeting with Caldwell Banker, and that's what prompted a lot of these changes that's before you, because they have given us a lot of input. So we expect November 1st to have a closing and actually try to get some of this site work and preparation done, and then we'll start units next spring.
So when you say closing for your construction financing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is more of a curiosity, which Caldwell Banker office are you using?
Hingham,
Okay,
South Street in Hingham was the office.
okay.
And the phasing component of it, that is going to maintain that same, I think there was initial, a 3-phase that you talked about, areas to build first.
Yes, the phasing plan, everything approved in the past, we're not asking for any changes.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to that, and it worked out well. And prior to the hearing, I did, and prior to the submission, talk with the building inspector about the plans and the clubhouse and things, and he did share with me, I don't know if he was able to share with the board, but 2 or 3 other communities around the same size do not have clubhouses, or had them removed as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we felt we were in keeping with what's been transpiring in the community.
And actually with the permit submittal, you'll be with the current code as well?
Yes,
Changes
a lot of the change of the 4% footprint was because I have to meet current codes. There's different egresses and access. And
Right.
Energy.
Hallway width, everything.
Energy Star, everything will be Energy Star, and we also went to the level of gaining all of the fire department approvals for communication, how the sprinkler systems will go, so we're pretty far along with the local approvals necessary.
Any other questions? It seems,
What-
I think we have one more, is there one more revision?
No, those are the only 2.
Oh, not site walkways?
Oh, the walkways were modified as well as part, they're shown on the same plan, I apologize, yes, they're They're probably, I think they're clearer on the large plan. You have
Yeah.
large plan?
What we did was actually connected to things that weren't connected. So we've not decreased or changed anything.
Sure.
We've actually enhanced it so it flows better. So all the sidewalks that were called out, designed, nothing's been changed or removed. We had some areas in the plans that were deficient. They didn't come up to the unit completely, and we've just now tied that in.
Modified.
Yeah.
Okay. Makes more sense.
Thank you for that clarification.
No, no
I-
worries.
I've forgotten about it. It's shown on the plans. I don't think. I
You weren't trying to hide it, it's right here. Yeah, we're good.
And again, a lot of this we could have picked up on the as-built, but we think it's important to,
Right.
share with the board everything going on and just keep a good relationship.
No, but the most important thing for me is the walkways go all the way around.
Absolutely, yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Well, personally, I mean, I think that these, the elimination of the clubhouse kind of makes sense. I like the idea that you may end up with more open space. I just, when you're building these units for families and hoping to entice families to come in, it's always nice to have, more open space where kids can be, so. It makes sense in terms of, like you said, any HOA fees to reduce them. And it is right in town, so I'm not sure that, the clubhouse is gonna particularly add significant, value.
And even the space that they have, or created, the open space, it could be, a temporary tent or another function. I mean, what's on the site.
Oh, yeah, even just
Yeah.
more space to build a snowman or throw a ball around is
Yeah,
maybe as good as indoor space.
Right.
It's not like the units are tiny.
No,
right.
So,
And when we come up with the final amenities, if it's a gazebo and it has a water source or something, we want to be able to show everything at once and have it designed and figured out. That's all.
I don't have any other questions. It seems,
I'm good to
like
go.
we initially said, it's not a substantial.
I would propose a
Non-substantial.
motion. Yeah, I propose to find that the changes as described within the correspondence dated August 10th, 2017 from Attorney Costa be deemed non-substantial,
And maybe-
insubstantial.
And we just modify that to reference "and shown" on
And shown
the
on, yes.
revised site plan dated August 3rd, 2017, and submitted with the application.
Correct.
Maybe you should second it.
Second.
There we go.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do we have to,
We have been.
Write a
Do you want to write it up?
You've been memorializing your decision, and that's fine. I can certainly do that.
Yeah.
yeah, I think with your
I don't think you really-
correspondence,
Technically, I
start
don't think
there.
you have to,
Yeah,
but,
more or less just the motion, right?
well, here's what was said, because I think if you actually read the rule says it's deemed changed, but what was explained to me during several other projects ago is that it may muddy up your banking title or whatever.
I always advise the ZBAs I represent to memorialize an insubstantial change the same way they would a substantial change. It's obviously a shorter version of decision, but I've got a form I use, and I know that you've got a format, so I'll combine the two and include the substance of what the changes
that
are.
will be on record and filed, so that, again, feedback, anyone will have that decision.
That's fine,
in
thanks.
the briefing for it.
Perfect.
That's great. I'll provide that to your secretary.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you
Would
very
you
much.
like this, in case you need it for something?
Sure.
And,
I'm sorry, I wrote on the back.
That's okay, you can keep it.
No, you know what, it's going in my
Well,
circular
you're
file.
we have your originals here too, so if you back, so we don't need those. And you received copies of what you submitted.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's,
Electronically and hard copy.
all right, then we should be all set.
Okay,
Excellent, thank
Great,
you.
thank you.
thank you very much.
Say hi to Mr. Tallerman for us.
Yes, I will.
I haven't seen him in a long time.
He's in Cape May as we speak on the beach.
Oh, good, good for him.
Thank
You
you.
too, thank you.
Hi, how are you? I was called earlier, and unfortunately, it wasn't a 2-hour commute to get here, so I missed pretty much everything that happened. I did have my mailers, in case you needed those. Certified mail, for the butters.
So what, I'm sorry, what's this regarding?
This is Mr. Valdez. and-
Oh, I thought the other guy was Mr. Valdez.
No, so I think
He's the
perhaps
engineer.
that was his engineer. This is Mr. Valdez.
Ah,
Yeah.
Surprise. Hi.
We can certainly explain to him what has happened.
Right,
yes,
right.
so,
Yeah, only because I didn't get any information, so I was just curious.
no problem at all, so, we need a quorum of 3 people in order to vote on your application. John disclosed when we opened your application that he's a direct abutter of your property, and so therefore, that's really reason number 1 that a board member would recuse themselves.
Has to, yeah.
So with him recusing himself, we don't have a quorum in order to vote on your application, so we continued it until the September meeting,
Yeah.
September
So that would be,
21st.
Another month from now?
September
It would be,
21st.
yes.
Would I have to go through the whole process all over again just because of,
The process of submitting, yeah.
You just have to show up.
just open it? Okay, so, okay.
Yeah. Oh,
You-
doesn't he have to sign something for you, Annie?
Um,
A continuation?
In writing, just send an email, please,
Okay.
that you're requesting a continuance
Well,
of the hearing.
Well,
I-
he's
I'm
not
not-
requesting
I'm not sure he needs
continuation.
to do that
If
if
it's-
we
if we voted.
voted on a continuance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Alright.
it's we're the continuance, not
Yeah.
him.
I think he still might have to approve it. I mean, just for clarity.
I think,
If you don't mind doing that, it's probably redundant, but,
I think his question is, what's the form of that approval?
oh, it's just, you understand
Yeah.
because of the conflict of interest of Mr. Hallen, that we're going to be hearing you September next month.
Okay, sounds good.
Sorry about that.
It's okay, as long as I don't have to go through the whole,
Your
No.
application is submitted, and it's now an application for September.
21st at night.
you don't need these at all? Okay, because I went through a conservation meeting last night for another property, and they were extremely adamant about having this before I could do anything.
Oh,
I was just curious if that's the same procedure, but evidently not. Okay,
Yeah.
no problem. That's all, I'll just hear from you and
September 21st, same time, same place.
right,
All right,
right.
thank
It
you.
was unavoidable, we're sorry. Thank you. I thought he
I
was
thought he was-
Mr.
I didn't,
Costa.
I had met
Neither
the
did I.
person before, so I thought the engineer was.
So did I,
So did I.
but
Okay.
now everybody knows.
All right, minutes, yes.
What month?
July.
July. I read those.
I
They
did
were-
too.
All right, motion to approve the meeting minutes for the July meeting as circulated by Annie.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion to adjourn?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.